Welcome. I am Mrs. Tonioli, and today we are going to be learning about writing equations from tables. It goes with our Learning Target 2C, which is about analyzing dependent and independent variables using graphs and tables to relate them to an equation. But we're only going to be doing a piece of that today, and then we'll be doing a piece of it tomorrow and a piece of it the next day. So today our main goal is to be able to look at a table and to be able to write an equation from that table. So last year in fifth grade, you talked about input-output tables and you looked at them kind of like a machine. So when you put a number in, the machine does something to that number and then you get another number out. And so if we kind of look at that like this, here's our input and we're going to put 9 in. We're going to call our input X. Anything that goes in is going to be called X. Then we have what the computer does, our rule. And in this case, we're going to take whatever X is and add 3. And then we get the output, which we're going to call our Y. So if I put 9 in and call it X and substitute X with 9, I get 9 plus 3 is 12. And I am going to put my output over here. So my Y would be 12. When X is 9 and I have X plus 3, Y is 12. Let's try another one. If my input is 8, that is my X, and this is what I do to it. I take X and I times it by 2 and then add 7. What would my output be? So if I put 8 in, 2 times 8 is 16, and 16 plus 7 is 23. My Y would be 23. Okay, if I put 4 in and I do X minus 3, so I would have 4 minus 3, then my output, or my Y, would equal 1. If I put 10 in and then I do 5 times 10, so that would be 50, my Y would equal 50. If I put 25 in and I do 25 minus 13, then my Y, or my output, would equal 12. So writing an equation is going to be very similar to this, except that we're going to know the input and we're going to know the output, and our goal is going to be to find the rule. What is it we're doing to that X to get it to equal Y? So we're going to start with this table right here. In this case, we're just going to practice putting the information in a table. So our Y, or our output, is equal to 2x plus 2, or minus 2. So that means that my rule is 2x minus 2. These numbers right here are my input. That's what I'm putting into it. Then I'm going to do 2x minus 2, and this is what I'm going to get out. So when I put 5 in, 2 times 5 is 10, minus 2 is 8. If I put 7 in, 2 times 7 is 14, minus 10 is 12. If I put 9 in, 2 times 9 is 18, minus 2 is 16. If I put 11 in, 2 times 11 is 22, minus 2 is 20. And if I put 12 in, 2 times 12 is 24, minus 2 is 22. Okay, so that's how we're going to get started. Go ahead and put the video on pause and fill out this table on your own, and then turn it back in and see if your answers match mine. Okay, so if I put 2 in for X, I have 2 plus 5 equals 7. If I put 3 in, I have 3 plus 5, which equals 8. If I put 6 in, I have 6 plus 5, which equals 11. If I put 8 in, 8 plus 5 is 13. And if I put 10 in, 10 plus 5 is 15. All right, now we're going to look at a table that is written vertically rather than horizontally, but it works exactly the same. So here's my X's. These are my inputs. Here's what I'm going to put in. Y is what I get out, and the 6x plus 3 is my rule. That's what I'm going to do to every number that I put in. I'm going to times it by 6, and then I'm going to add 3. So if I put 2 in, and I times it by 6, that's 12, plus 3 is 15. If I put 4 in, 6 times 4 is 24, plus 3 is 27. If I put 6 in, 6 times 6 is 36, plus 3 is 39. Let's see, I accidentally put a square in there, so let's take that out. Okay, 39. If I put 8 in, 6 times 8 is 48, plus 3 is 51. And if I put 10 in, 6 times 10 is 60, plus 3 is 63. All right, easy enough, I hope, because now we're going to make it a little bit harder. Okay, so notice on this one, X is our input, Y is our output, but this time our goal is to create an equation that represents the table. So this time we don't know the rule. We need to try to figure out what the rule is, and then we can fill in the missing box and write the equation. So basically we're trying to figure out what's being done to that input to get that output. And it has to be the same thing every single time. It can't be something different. The rule doesn't change for our machine. That machine does only that same rule. So as I'm looking here, what do I do to 7 to get to 11? So the first thing I usually check is addition. Am I adding something? So I can add 4 and get to 11. Is that true here? If I do 8 plus 4, do I get 12? Yep. If I do 11 plus 4, do I get 15? I do. So it looks like my rule is to add 4. Now last year when you did this, you would have just written add 4. My rule is to add 4. But now we're in 6th grade, we're a little bit more advanced. We're going to use our algebra skills and we're going to actually write the equation. Where what am I adding 4 to? I'm adding 4 to my x to get my y. So I'm going to write my y equals, which is my output, x plus 4. Whatever I put in for x, if I add 4 to it, I will get the correct y. So the box that I should be filling in here, 15 plus 4, is 19. So my missing number would be 19. All right, let's try that again on this one. So again, we have our x and we have our y. We have our input and we have our output. Our goal is to find the rule. What am I doing to x every time so that I get that y? So we're looking for the relationship. So I can check adding this time, but to get from 3 to 15, I would have to add 12. So is 4 plus 12 20? No, 4 plus 12 is 16. So that's not going to be my rule. So next I'm going to check multiplication. Am I multiplying x by something every time? Well, 3 times 5 gives me 15. 4 times 5 gives me 20. And 5 times 5 gives me 25. So it looks like that is my rule. I take my x and I multiply it by 5. So I have 5x. I'm going to write it the lazy way without the fewest number of symbols. And that equals my y. Whatever I put in for x, I times it by 5, and that gives me my y. If I do that over here, 9 times 5 is 45. So my missing number would be 45. Okay, let's try again on this one right here. So again, what is that relationship between your x and your y? What's being done to x to get to y? So notice that my y's are smaller than my x's. So that indicates to me it's either subtraction or it's division. So to get from 8 to 4, I would have to subtract 4. So I'm going to try that here. Is 10 minus 4 5? No, it is not. So subtracting is not what my pattern is. But I can also get to 4 by doing 8 divided by 2. Is 10 divided by 2 5? Yes. Is 12 divided by 2 6? Yes. So it looks like my pattern here is to divide by 2. So I put my x in and I divide it by 2, and that gives me my output or my y. So if I do that to this number, 16 divided by 2 is 8. So my output would be 8. Okay, this is a vertical table, but it works exactly the same way. So we're looking for, how do I get from X to Y? What is it that I'm doing to my X that gives me that output? So I check addition first and say, am I adding the same thing? 2 plus 7 is 9. 3 plus 7 is 10. It's not 11, so I'm not adding. I can't get to 9 by multiplying 2 by a whole number, so that's probably not it. So I'm not adding, and I'm not multiplying, and I'm not dividing, and I'm not subtracting because my output is bigger than my input. That tells me I probably have a two-step rule. So I'm going to have a two-step equation. And I could guess and check. I could just start guessing and checking, but there is a little bit quicker way so that you don't have to guess and check. If you look at your X column, find two X values that are right next to each other. So I have a 2 and a 3. Now take a look at the Y values for those. Those have a difference of 2. That tells me that I am multiplying my X by 2. So if I multiply by 2, I have 2 times 2, which is 4, and then I would have to add 5 to make it equal 9. So let's try that here. 3 times 2 equals 6, plus 5 equals 11. 7 times 2 equals 14, plus 5 equals 19. So it looks like my pattern is that I multiply by 2, and then I add 5. So once again, you could have guessed and checked, but you can take, if you can find two X values that are next to each other, and then look at the Y values, look at how many they are different. If they differ by 3, then you're going to multiply by 3 as part of your rule. If they differ by 4, you're going to be multiplying by 4, and so on. But you have to make sure those X values are right next to each other, a 2 and a 3, or a 4 and a 5. Okay, so the way that I write this is I take my X and I times it by 2. So I'm going to write that as 2X, and then I'm going to add 5, and that equals my output, which is my Y. So my equation that goes with my table is 2X plus 5 equals Y. So if I put 9 in and times it by 2, that's 18, plus 5 gives me 23. So my missing value is 23. Okay, let's try it again on this one. We're trying to find what pattern, what's the rule that gets me from X to Y. So I look at addition. I would have to do 2 plus 9 to get 11. Does 3 plus 9 give me 16? Nope, it doesn't. 2 times no whole number gives me 11, so it's probably not that. And my output is bigger than my input, so I'm probably not dividing or subtracting, at least not at first. So let's use our little trick that we learned last time. So I'm going to find actually I have 3 numbers that are right in a row on my X values, 2, 3, and 4. Now let's take a look at the Y values and see what's the difference in our Y values. So there's a difference here of 5. 11 plus 5 is 16, and 16 plus 5 is 21. So since the difference is 5, that means that I'm multiplying my x's by 5 as part of my rule. So 2 times 5 is 10. Then I would have to add 1 to get to 11. 3 times 5 is 15, plus 1 gets me 16. 4 times 5 is 20, plus 1 gives me 21. So I'm going to be multiplying by 5, and then I add 1. So the way that I would write that is my x, I multiply it by 5. So I'm going to write that as 5x, and then I add 1 to it, and that equals my output, which is y. If I do that down here, 7 times 5 is 35, plus 1 is 36. So my missing number is 36. All right, if you need a little break, here's kind of a fun video called NFL Bad Lip Reading. It's kind of funny, so take a quick break and go ahead and watch that video. Okay, and then let's get back to creating our equations. All right, so this one is horizontal, so now I'm looking for my x to my y's this way. So I'm checking addition and multiplication first, and if neither of those work, then I'm going to check, it's going to be multiple operations. So it looks like to get from 3 to 12, I can do 3 times 4. Does 7 times 4 work here? Yep. Does 10 times 4 work there? Yep. So it looks like I'm taking x and I'm timesing it by 4, and that equals my y. So if I do that here, 12 times 4 is 48. Okay, put the video on pause and see if you can find the equation that represents this table, and then turn it back on and check your answer. Okay, we're looking at how do I get from my x to my y? And it looks like my y's values are smaller than my x values, so I must be doing division or subtraction. So the first thing I look at is subtract 3, but 8 minus 3 is not 2, so that can't be it. So how else can I get from 4 to 1? I can divide by 4, and 8 divided by 4 is 2, 16 divided by 4 is 4, so it looks like my pattern is to divide by 4. So I have my x and I divide it by 4, and that equals my output, or my y. So 24 divided by 4 is 6. So my missing value is 6. All right, let's try this one here. So I need to click on that. Okay. How do I get from x to y? So I can do 4 plus 7 gives me 11. Does 5 plus 7 give me 12? Yes, it does. Does 11 plus 7 give me 18? Yes, it does. So it looks like my pattern is to add 7. But we're not just going to write add 7. We're going to write that as an equation, and we're going to say we take x and we add 7, and that equals our output, or our y. So if I do that here, 15 plus 7 is 22. So my missing value is 22. Okay, quickly looking at this one, I can see that to get from x to y, I would have to add 10 to 3 to get 13, and that's not true of this. And I can't multiply 3 by anything and get 13, so, or at least not a whole number. So I must be doing more than one operation. So I'm going to take a look at my x values that are right next to each other here and see how their y values are related. So when my x values are right next to each other, their y values have a difference of 2. So that means I'm going to be multiplying by 2. So 3 times 2 is 6, and then I would have to add 7 to equal 13. 4 times 2 is 8, and then I would add 7 and get 15. 7 times 2 is 14, plus 7 is 21. And oh look, I already have your answer in here. 10 times 2 is 20, plus 7 is 27. So in my equation, what am I doing to x? I'm timesing it by 2, and then I'm adding 7, and that equals my y value. So my equation that goes along with this is 2 times x plus 7 will give me my y value. Again, I found two x values that were right next to each other, and then I found the difference in their y values, and that tells me that I'm multiplying by 2. All right, last one. Go ahead and pause the video, do it on your own, and then check your answer with mine. So to get from 10 to 9, I can subtract 1. That looks like to get from 11 to 10, I subtract 1, and 12 to 11, I subtract 1. So it looks like every time I'm just subtracting 1. So whatever my x is, I subtract 1, and that equals my y value. So if I do that here, 14 subtract 1 is 13. Okay, good luck on your assignment and writing equations. I hope you'll do awesome.